A White Stone by Jim and Mary Corbett. Chapter 5. From Our Father's Heart. In the name of the Lord, you say. You go about your business doing your works, and call them mine. How can what you do be truly mine, if you don't spend enough time with me to hear me, to search my heart, to find my ways, to know me? I am not in your feasts. I am not in your programs. I am not in your fellowships. A time is coming when those who think they hear my voice will see and understand who they have really been listening to. It is not me. All the works of the flesh will wash away as so much grime. I will not complete what I did not initiate. Stop praying for things. Stop working for men and their desires. Begin praying to search me out. I can be found. I desire to be found. Those who choose to know me are wise. Those who come to me will walk the straight, safe path. My ways are sure. My time is well spent for those who have heard me. End of From Our Father's Heart reading. For as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but remove their hearts and minds far from me, and their fear and reverence for me are a commandment of men that is learned by repetition, without any thought as to the meaning. Therefore, behold, I will again do marvelous things with this people, marvelous and astonishing things, and the wisdom of their wise men will perish, and the understanding of their discerning men will vanish or be hidden. Isaiah 29:13 and 14 Amplified. Heralding itself as one of the fastest-growing churches in the land, His Holiness Christian Fellowship took much pride in its impact upon the community it served. From the long, winding entrance sidewalks, past majestic fountains and manicured lawns, to the three-balconied superstructure with its orchestra pit and tiered choir platform that was filled as usual to capacity with a 350-member choir, it spoke of the commitment of its congregation to receive the blessings God had for them. Each Sunday, 10 buses would go to local communities and return with the poor, the infirm, the children who could not make it to His Holiness for some reason or another, and then return them home after the service. Because of the commitment of Pastor Wickham to be salt and light to the world, the activities of the church body were unparalleled. Due to its vast financial resources and the commitment of its people, His Holiness had a powerful influence within its vast outreach arms. 3 abortion clinics could no longer function due to the pressure applied by the church and its connections. In fact, the slogan, "A clinic a month for a year," boldly stated the commitment of the body of believers to clean up their community once and for all. In short, the church's successes in its continual social attempts to better the community served to show that the church was truly a force to be reckoned with. Thursday evening service at His Holiness Christian Fellowship was a time of testimony, praise, and Bible study. Mrs. Fontaine testified of her inheritance coming through after a long and drawn-out court battle. Tom Dilling thanked God for his new job, and Mike and Cindy Lackinger praised God for their new mortgage. They felt it must have been God's hand on them, for they really didn't qualify for a mortgage that size, but somehow they got it anyway. Tom and Millie led the gathering in praise that seemed unusually sweet, at least to Tom and Sally, and prayer was offered for the sick and the lonely. All in all, it was a good evening. Pastor Wickham spoke of laying down our lives to become more like Jesus, and people came forward to commit to doing that. In fact, it seemed that they were the same people who usually came forward. Pastor noticed that Train, who had slipped in sometime during the service, was sitting in the last row under the first tier of balcony seats. "I'm sure by now you all have heard about this man," Pastor stated, extending his arm in a gesture of welcome toward Train. "He has caused quite a stir around here and is gaining a reputation for himself," he continued. "Train, would you come forward and share with us what the Lord is laying on your heart?" Pastor asked with a warm smile. All eyes turned toward the person whose name had been on the lips of many with stories that sometimes even surpassed the actual facts connected with the story being told. Slowly, Train stood to his feet, His countenance seemed heavy, and his characteristic smile and the brightness it invoked were absent. As he lifted his head, Tom saw that tears had filled his eyes. For a moment, Train surveyed the church body, which was now also sensing that something was not in order. He gazed upon all that were there with Christ-like compassion. Then, in quiet reverence, he turned and slowly walked out the door. "I'd better go and see what's up," Tom said to Sally. "Try to find a ride home, okay? I might be late." Tom left the startled crowd behind, almost running as he passed faces expressing concern and confusion regarding what had just transpired. He leaped down the front steps and slid past a startled group of teens who tried to quickly conceal the one cigarette they were sharing in secret. Tom asked a pimple-faced teenage boy, who was attempting to shove the cigarette at anyone who would risk taking it, "Have you seen a really big guy come past here?" "Yeah, he scared the snot out of us," Billy Cameron said, waving his hand around in a vain attempt to remove the cloud of smoke that encircled the group. "We thought he was an angel or something, he was so big. I think he's over behind that garage." Running in the direction Billy indicated, Tom began to pray, "Lord, help me to help him. I'm sorry if I've hurt him. How could I know all of this would be too much for him?" Then at the corner of the Family Resources building, Tom saw him, sobbing like a baby, his immense frame shaking with each new burst of tears. He was bent over a yard tractor, weak from the pain he felt. "I'm so sorry, man," Tom said. "Is there anything I can do?" "I need to go home," Train responded through continued tears that belied his rugged features. "I want you to come with me," he stated, in a manner that left no room for discussion. The sun had set behind the well-lit streets, sculptured lawns, and expensive homes with all their finery. As they got closer to Train's neighborhood, a different kind of darkness encapsulated the dingy street corners, grimy alleyways, and desolate homes where people had long ago given up on trying to keep their properties safe and up to date. Tom couldn't help but think of what he experienced the last time he walked the streets in this area. As he kept his head fixed on the road in front of him, he noticed gangs on almost every corner with his peripheral vision. If only they had some hope to cling to and a purpose to head them in the right direction. He silently prayed for the Lord's protection and wisdom to understand what was happening. At Train's request, Tom's recently purchased, and now in this setting, ridiculous-looking BMW came to a stop in front of a building that looked as if it had been abandoned for many years. Tom realized they were very near the place where he'd first met Train. As soon as the car stopped, Train escaped its confines and stretched to relieve his cramped muscles. He stood silently near the right front fender as a crowd started to gather. Tom was amazed at the number of people who came seemingly out of nowhere to check out him, the BMW, and probably whatever was about to happen. As the crowd kept getting bigger and closer, Tom felt the smartest thing he could do was lessen the space between him and Train. As he attempted to move in that direction, something happened that he'd never experienced before. Even though he tried to excuse himself so he could navigate the crowd, no one would move. In fact, no one would look directly at him. He remembered the open defiance he'd encountered with the two young boys playing ball the night he met Train, but that was nowhere near as frightening as this. The common courtesies that were a part of Tom's typical day did not exist for him here, and it made him panicky. What chance did he have if anything threatening happened? What would he say if anyone even spoke to him? He was truly the odd one in this setting, and at this point he wished he wasn't so different. It was clear he didn't belong here, and it seemed like everyone around him was trying to make that extremely evident. Tom was mistaken about what was happening. This was all about control, which came in many forms. He was a non-entity in all of this. As Tom watched, pockets of people began to form, making elementary attempts at being noticed. A gang of youths began shoving each other to gain attention and attract a larger audience so they could start a potential fight. Some girls began to talk and giggle loudly, while others danced suggestively to imaginary music, hoping some of the younger men would join them. Several older men walked right up to Tom's car and began appraising it as to whether or not they would consider it the next time they decided it was time for another car. As Tom was preoccupied with the people and his immediate surroundings, he hadn't noticed the subtle change taking place. From the moment Train moved to the front fender of the car, he was praying silently. His father, knowing his need at that specific moment and using the best means available, equipped Train with street authority. Everyone knew he had sold out to Jesus, no longer fought, and certainly wasn't the same person he was a year ago. A spirit much more powerful than his former human spirit now resided in him. Train gratefully gave his full cooperation as God made the changes. No matter what anyone else may have had in mind for this occasion, God's will would be accomplished. Tom saw it in Train's face. His countenance had changed from morose to determined right before Tom's eyes. Everyone else noticed it as soon as Train spoke. "Let it be known on the street," he said in a voice Tom remembered hearing only once before at their first meeting, "that this is my friend's car. Do you understand?" he said with directness. They did. The crowd immediately quieted and began to disperse. Train took the most unlikely candidates, the appraisers, and called them aside. "I need you guys to make sure nothing happens to this car. You are going to do that." He spoke in surprising gentleness. "Yes, sir," they agreed, almost like polite children. Train thanked them and expressed in street talk how confident he was the car would remain safe. As they walked toward the building where Train lived, Tom could hear the men making plans and discussing who would do the best job protecting the car and which shift they each would take during the night. Tom didn't understand how he knew his car would be all right, but he did. In addition to the men, several invisible warriors positioned themselves near the car and around the entrances of the apartment building Train lived in. End of chapter 5. End of chapter.